Hi again, everybody. Scott Costa, the publisher of TED Magazine. Thanks for joining me for another Distributed with TED Magazine podcast, both audio and video. We're talking data today, and we found some of the best in the business when it comes to analyzing your data. David Bauders is the CEO of SPARXiQ, joined us on the podcast along with Mark McGready. Mark McGready is the Director of Channel Analytics for SPARXiQ. He's also NAED's Data Insights Advisor for the association. They had some great things to say about how you're analyzing your data, how you should be analyzing your data, what data analytics look like in the future, the difference between past analytics and your future analytics. Really, we had a great conversation. I was really happy with what they had to say. You're going to enjoy it too. Here it is, my conversation about data analytics with SPARXiQ's David Bauders and Mark McGready. David Bauders, Mark McGready, thank you a ton for joining us again on the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast. Let's get right into the data world. David, I'm going to start with you just in terms of, data, your term. Data is the gold of the new decade. Kind of tell me sort of where we're at, what we need to do to continue to move forward in this decade with this pot of gold that we can potentially have.
Yeah, great to be here. I think what we learned during the pandemic is that distributors have to do business differently. In a lot of ways, they had to change their business practices. And what they were really hungry for during that period was certain insights that could help them to be more efficient, that could be more effective, to take away or at least replace some of the old ways of doing things. And so if you think about it, the data that distributors have, which every distributor has, is really the DNA of their company. It explains who they are, how they got there, what they could become, and what would be the best version of themselves. And so the big question facing distributors today is, what is your attitude? What is your daily behavior and how you leverage these data?
And then David, to follow that up, because you mentioned again the amount, there really is no limit. Should you not limit yourself? Is there such a thing as there's just so much data coming? It's like, oh, it's too much for me to analyze. Should you be kind of focused? Where should we be?
Well, I think the important thing is to first define what are the questions that you're trying to answer. And for distributors, there's broadly 4 key business levers that they need to optimize. The first is their top line revenue. Are we selling to the best customers in the marketplace? Are we getting the right share of wallet?
That's okay. Keep going. See, you're such a busy guy. And people
that's an annoying trait of Zoom is that it allows people to do that. But anyway,
that's good. Keep going.
Yeah. So really the big 4 things that a distributor needs to master in order to optimize profitability. At the top, we have top line revenue. Are we selling to the best customers in the marketplace? Are we getting the best share of wallet? Are we converting our quotes effectively into orders and revenue? Another point that they have to master is pricing. And that means moving beyond simple Excel spreadsheets into the world of dynamic pricing. Mm-hmm. For many distributors in electrical, of course, the cost of goods sold and the cost support they get from their vendors are critical. If they still have their salespeople trying to guess what kind of cost support they can get from their vendors, they're not going to get the best cost. They're not going to be competitive. They're not going to maximize profitability. And really, the last key operational lever is managing cost to serve. That is, how do we align the service model that we provide our customers with their willingness to pay? And ultimately today, if a distributor wants to be elite in terms of the evolution of the industry, they have to hit on all 4 cylinders. You can't just be maxing out on one. You're going to have to hit on all 4.
David, what's the commitment to that then? In terms of, am I looking at this in cycles of quarters? Am I looking at this in cycles of months? Where am I focusing to make sure that I'm getting the most out of those 4 prongs of data?
Well, everybody can build their own adventure. We have what we call a maturity scale, which basically says, where do you fall on any one of those attributes? Are you not doing anything to try to optimize them? Are you informally doing it? Are you randomly doing it? Are you doing it in a more formalized way where you're trying to measure it and you have systems and tools to ensure the execution of it? Are you doing it systematically? And finally, are you doing it adaptively? So for many companies, they'll need to first ask the question, where are we today? What's our current state? And which of those 4 variables is the best place for them to start?
And Mark, we've talked in the past, you're an advocate of what you call the chief data officer.
Yes.
So kind of take us inside now in terms of, again, this data is critical to your success. What should I be doing? What are the nuts and bolts? How do I analyze, how do I set myself up to make sure I'm getting the most out of my data?
I think one of the key things to remember about this is there's no company today that doesn't think they have too much reporting. They have, a lot of people think they have data solved because they have reports on every single thing and they get bombarded by spreadsheets every day. But that's not what we're really talking about here. We're not talking about just generating more reports. That kind of measures what you are. What we're talking about is the why. What we're talking about is what is driving the behavior behind that number and what behavior can you change. And that's really where you need to have someone who has an understanding of where all of this data is being driven and where it all comes from. And why I believe companies would really benefit from having a data expert within their business. Someone who can, sales are up 20% this year. That's a report that every distributor has at their fingertips right now. Why are sales up 20% right now? That's maybe a little bit tougher to solve. What they can do typically is they can measure and say, we are up in switchgear, we are up in lighting, we have a couple of big project jobs that have come in. But I mean, for example, a question every distributor is wrestling with right now is how much of my sales increase is due to price increases compared to how much of it is organic growth. Have I recovered my volume to where it was in 2018 or 2019, or am I still up because 2020 was so poor? And those, of course, have real ramifications because if your revenues are increasing, your operations have to increase. So you have to hire more people, you have to bring in more inventory, you have to have more sales support, you're going to have more logistics. So all of these measures kind of have a staircase of impacts of other measures in the company as well. And so I think it's critical in reviewing your capabilities as an organization when it comes to data analytics to be able to discern what is a measure of what I am and what is a measure of why I am and what I should do about it. And that's really, I think, what's going to make the difference between the men and the boys in the future. The companies who spend the time to go behind these numbers and get an understanding of what's really driving it, and understanding then the activities and actions that can change that trend. Those are the people who are going to be the masters of their data and will allow, I've always said the data was a roadmap to your business. It's like your DNA, it's like your health scorecard, whatever it might be. All the answers to what should we do today lies in the data that you have on your servers right now. So if you have a question, if your sales guys wake up on Monday morning and wonder how they're going to fill the week and it's not being driven by data, or if your logistics people are looking at the inventory investments and trying to figure out what new products they need to carry or where they need to trim, and that's not being driven by data. Or if you have a price team that's quoting project jobs and you don't know whether you should be more aggressive in price or you should be trying to capture a little bit more price. If it's all kind of winging it, then you get what you get when you're winging it all the time. You know, sometimes you go in the right direction, sometimes you go in the wrong direction. Where I don't think it's a long journey to have a little bit of data insight and a little bit of data discipline, so you make more decisions in the direction that you want to go rather than kind of stumbling your way there, which is kind of how I think a lot of companies end up a little bit. One of my favorite anecdotes was we were looking, when I was working for a manufacturer, we were looking at our sales performance, and we had grown our stock sales by 7 or 8% a year that year or something like that, and we were celebrating this massive success, and it was terrific. And I was the guy in the room who said, well, how much of the incremental was true new business, and how much of it did we have to pay to try and acquire that new business compared to how much business did we lose? And the equivalent was that we went to the blackjack table and we lost $4 to win $5, and we celebrated that dollar. And I'm like, if we had lost 3 instead of 4, we would have had twice as much. So all of the activities and actions that we had to try and win that $5 meant that $4 fell out of our wallet at the same time, whereas we could have just been a little bit smarter and made a little bit more. So the why behind any sort of data results, to me, is the real driver of the behaviors. And if you can put that in as part of your environment and part of your culture, so your sales guys understand what these numbers mean and understand how they should change the conversations they have with customers, or they should change where their focus is, or any of that sort of stuff, I think makes for a more successful, proactive environment for getting the results that you want.
Mark, let me follow up with you real quick, and I I don't want to be over generic and talk about, again, those who desperately need somebody to help them with their data analytics and those who don't. I think that, there are probably folks out there that need that, and that's great. But there are folks out there that, let's face it, they get caught up in what many call the tyranny of the urgent. Like, I just need to sell more stuff today. I need to get inventory in. We have short supply of the things we need to turn around because our customers are demanding it. And I guess today's another day that we're not going to look at data. Kind of get me on track in terms of, again, the haves and the have-nots, in terms of how often should I be, how often do I need to have data-driven strategy meetings to make sure that I'm ahead of the curve, regardless of how busy I am?
To me, it feels essential, because otherwise you don't know if you're going in the right direction. Mm-hmm. So it's just one of those things. And I think a lot of people are sitting down monthly and having reviews of their reports and their numbers and their performance.
And is that okay? Is that enough? Is that often enough?
Well, I don't know if this environment is so dynamic that once a month to review where we're going feels pretty good for a senior leadership team, for example. But I think that as long as that conversation is beyond the surface level and there's a little bit more understanding behind why the number is what it is, then that should be beneficial, because there's only so much change in behavior that you can introduce in your organization. You can't have your sales force spinning in different directions consistently. So you want to, kind of pick your journey and then make sure that you're going in that journey in the right direction. But someone in the organization should be looking at numbers all the time. That should be somebody's job to, live like I've lived in databases and spreadsheets and coming up with new insights and things every single week. I think that has felt like a luxury to have in an organization, to have a numbers guy that's going to look at and tell us things about our business. And I think it's moving to become essential rather than a luxury. To have a couple of brains sitting in a basement powered by energy drinks and darkness, analyzing numbers and coming back and telling, did you know that this is happening with our freight costs? Or do you know that this is happening with our services? Or do you know that we've lost this in this particular product line? Or that these large customers that we depend on have started to fall off recently and we need to try and turn it around because they're expensive to replace. Those kind of things. I've likened running a business to mission control at NASA. They have all of these little, nerdy guys sitting in front of the computers monitoring all the different aspects of what's happening on the mission. And, 90% of their job is staring at a screen with the numbers not moving and everything's kind of doing their job, but they're there to raise their hand whenever something isn't doing what it should be doing. And that's a little bit about what the data guy should be there to do. He's the guy who's sitting in the basement and comes up and says, hey, we got a problem that's coming here because I've noticed a trend in our behavior that could become quite serious at a certain point.
I do think it's important, though, to be able to differentiate between, let's say, strategic decision-making with data and frontline employees' decision-making. And then
explain that. Yeah, explain that, David. What is, what is the difference and how does that come?
So like what Mark was talking about is a classic power user model, which is you need to have somebody who knows data, who lives and breathes data, and who engages with management to make important business decisions about the company. But there's another level of analytics, and this is really where the 2020s will be defined, which is around workflow analytics. How do we guide people during their daily jobs to make better decisions? How do we help them identify which customer should I talk to today about what? And who should I be selling to today that I'm not selling to today? And it's that level of prescriptive, democratized analytics that's really the revolution now. And there, yes, there is a big revolution available to the power using, the Star Trek type of thing. But there's also this other dimension, which a lot of companies are not participating in right now, which is helping frontline employees make better guided decisions through prescriptive analytics. And it's whether it's understanding share of wallet when they're on the phone with the customer in the moment, being able to append products to a quote or to an order, being able to make a call to the vendor and ask for better cost support because the cost support you're getting is defective. Those types of choices that people make, they don't have a monthly cycle, they have a minute by minute cycle. And that's because they're in workflow. And that's the key difference. It has to move from being descriptive to being prescriptive and in workflow. The things Mark was talking about are really strategic questions and directional questions. But at some point, all of that strategy And all that direction has to make its way into the minds and the mouths as they speak with customers of frontline employees. And that's really where the revolution's taking place.
And to build on that, that's the data-driven culture that we've talked about, where it becomes an intrinsic part of working in an organization, that your job is informed by getting data that's delivered to you, so you know kind of what to do every single day. And it also helps. The number one problem when you talk about data analytics is people will say there's too much data and too much to try and analyze, and I don't know how to eat the elephant. But the truth is that no one has to eat the elephant. If you divide the data into an environment, everybody just gets a spoonful of elephant at a time. And that's how you eat the elephant, bit by bit kind of a thing. So everybody gets their little portion, like a little bit of cake, and it arrives on their desk every morning. And here's your bit of elephant for today. Eat it up and we'll get you more tomorrow. And that's really the transformation of the reporting power user data analytics solution to breaking it down to actions and activities that people can go through every single day.
Yeah, I think one of the simple examples of that is around Salesforce call planning. If you talk to most distributors today, ask them, what does your call planning process look like? Say basically our salespeople wake up each day and they spend time with whoever they want to. Now we know in an industry where operating profit is only 4% of revenue, and Salesforce commonly costs 10, 15, or 20% of revenue. Using such a precious resource that way in such an indiscriminate and let's say undisciplined way is going to produce a lot of losses in the industry. So even today, if you think about the narrow question of call planning for sales teams, do they know who the best people are for them to talk to about what? How will they allocate those 8 hours in the day? If they spend it, spinning the roulette wheel of revenue and profitability, don't be surprised if they underperform. It's really that guided decision making that's changing the elite distributors into a force to be reckoned with.
David, I want to continue on this because again, I jotted down some notes as you were talking about, again, sort of the prescriptive data analytics versus descriptive. I personally think I would fall into the trap of, seeing what my data is for a quarter or for a month and just being hyper focused on that and not necessarily using that as a prescription, sort of a futurized look at, okay, here are things that I should change. I would more look at it as what mistakes did I make or what things went positively during that quarter. And are you saying that, how do I make that work for me though, that I continue to think toward the future and not at the set of data that I have? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think you're on to something, but I think you're not giving yourself quite enough credit. So when you were looking backwards, you were trying to implicitly answer not only what did you do well or do poorly at in the past, you were trying to set your mind to what would likely happen next. And this is what we call predictive analytics.
Right.
You're not saying what should happen. You're saying what's likely to happen if I don't do something different. And I think that curiosity that led you in that path to look at the past was informed by that desire to understand what could happen next. Now, where most people fall down is being able to make the shift forward from there, predictive analytics, into what should we do next, which is prescriptive. And that requires a different set of capabilities. Companies that spend their lives in spreadsheets cannot get to prescriptive analytics because prescriptive has no way of telling you. Descriptive has no way of telling you where you should go next. That's going to require some learning on your part. It may require some machine learning. It may require artificial intelligence. Those are the defining milestones in the 2020s that companies are going to have to master.
Or you know what? Maybe you just need some outside help. You need to talk to somebody about how to train you, SPARXiQ, about what it is that I need to be doing to move forward. Mark, I really want to talk about benchmarking. And sort of, I think you're the one who put it to me again a while back about, I can look in the mirror every day and think that I look fantastic and I'm in great shape.
Fantastic, Scott.
Yeah, but if I'm not really, I'm not. Yeah. But if I'm comparing myself to other people, if I'm comparing as a distributor, if I'm comparing myself to other distributors around my size and around my, again, around my market area, then I'm really getting a better look at how I'm doing. So kind of tell me about the importance of benchmarking in general as compared to just looking at my own internal sales data.
Yeah, if your only data source is yourself, then you reflect your own strengths and your own weaknesses. and really you just become an augmented version of who you already are. If a distributor wanted to understand, kind of where their wallet share is and where they could expand with their customers, and they use their own data, essentially they're just going to reflect back and show the products that they're already successful selling at, and it won't identify where their weaknesses are in the products that they don't carry or don't have a good relationship with or don't have good experience with. And that's not a realistic view of what's happening in the marketplace. So I think it's important for companies to embrace the idea of using benchmarking tools as much as possible to get an understanding of, I've described it as, what does good look like? I can think I'm good, but you kind of need to qualify good a little bit by looking at your peers and then saying, okay, this is what good looks like and this is what I look like. And the difference between the two tells you how much of a journey you have to go. You may be ahead of the curve, in which case you're great, or you may be behind the curve and you didn't know it because everything seemed fine internally. And so there's things like the Power Report, which I'll be doing a webinar on in August, and other benchmarking tools and services out there. And I think a lot of companies should take a look at those things. There's the Market Data Program, which I think is very strong for NAED, and I'm hoping to do what I can to help encourage people to take part in that program, because I think it's got a lot of very good critical information. If we can just help everyone connect the dots and how they can use that. But ultimately, if you're running a business and if you have a frame of reference of other successful peers, that's only a good thing for you. And it's something that I think everyone should chase and embrace as a concept, because I've heard a lot of companies think that they're really great and they don't need to compare themselves to the others because they're doing a better job than the other guys. But again, that's like standing in front of the mirror and thinking you're the best looking guy in the room, but only your opinion matters, and sometimes you're going to have to petition the opinion of others just to confirm that.
I do think that brings up an interesting other initiative that we've been working on, and that's really the point of sale data gathering. And while it obviously has a very important primary purpose of helping rep agencies get paid on time, it also yields insights that can help distributors to understand the metrics behind the metrics. So how, for example, does a particular distributor's average order size compare to other distributors' average order size? How does customer mix affect profitability? How does geographic branch structure, things like that, how do those variables push or pull against profitability? I think as distributors start to participate in these types of platforms, they're going to get a lot better insights, because we'll be able to understand not just what is an individual distributor's performance, but what do the other peer group distributors look like.
Yeah, I think there's culturally been resistance to this kind of letting your data outside your four walls. And I understand that, there are people that are very concerned about sharing data, about working with others, and about understanding best practices. And there's always been resistance between distributors wanting to share their point of sale with manufacturers if they didn't know what benefits was going to come off it. They kind of saw that as a prized possession kind of a thing. Yeah. But I think that it holds you back rather than put you in a good place. And if I can do what I can to try and encourage people to try and see the benefits of using these collective resources and working together and identifying what this data means and what changes can be brought in and how you can do more with it, it's better than sitting on essentially a resource that is, it's not really being used. Your data is probably the strongest resource that you have in your business. Analyzing that data and working with it and using it to drive all of your decisions is like having a brain sitting on a shelf. And the more you can make use of that, the better your business will become. And resistance to using that out of a hesitation for being used in the wrong way, I think misses the point of all the benefits that can come with using that information in the right way. And I think that it's a shorter journey to make sure that you're comfortable with what you're sharing than it is to not sharing anything at all and then not getting the benefits that can come from all of those insights.
Yeah, I think the other point is that it's possible to de-identify data. So you don't have to provide the end customer identity, or you may provide it to the point of sale hub without revealing it to manufacturers. And so that permissioning and governance part of the hub is really important because it gives you the benefits of having that information in the mix without without maintaining or releasing the identity of those customers to the vendor. So there are ways to get the benefits without releasing the sensitive information.
And so, David, bottom line, I mean, on this particular topic is, you're turning yourself into a have or a have not in terms of, you can invest a little and invest a little bit of time and invest a little bit of money and get a whole lot back. And so describe to me kind of the difference again then between, hey, those who are investing a little and getting a lot back versus those who are not, who have their whatever general concerns they have.
I guess the biggest question is how much time are they spending working in their business versus working on their business?
Yeah.
And if you're spending all of your time working in your business, you're not going to be a part of the next generation of market leaders. So it's really about attitude. It's about being intentional in how you allocate resources and bandwidth in the organization. And I do believe that the 2020s will see a significant consolidation, and the dividing line will be the attitude and the daily behaviors with respect to the data revolution.
Yeah.
Right. So David, if folks want to get in touch with you guys, which they should, about what their data-driven future looks like, how can they track you down? Go to the website, get in touch with you personally. What's the easiest, best way to get in touch?
You can reach out to us at SPARXiQ.com. You can reach me at David@SPARXiQ.com, and you can reach out to Mark McGready at Mark.McGready@SPARXiQ.com, and we'll be happy to discuss the data journey and see if there's some way we can help you.
Well, let's not end this journey here, because I think there's so much more we got to talk about, obviously. So we're going to have to schedule some more podcasts and schedule some stuff for maybe you guys to contribute to TED and some things that we want to do down the road, because this is, it's unfair to wrap data into one 25-minute podcast and think we're done. So we're not going to do that. And we're going to have to keep in touch with you guys if it's okay. David Bauders, CEO at SPARXiQ, and Mark McGready, the Director of Channel Analytics. Thank you a ton for joining me on the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast. I appreciate the first of many things to come.
Great to see you.
All the best, Scott.
Great. Don't go away yet. Real quick, if folks want to contact me about this for whatever reason or other podcasts I'm doing, real fast, you can call me 314-812-5311. You can send me an email, scosta, SCOSTA at NAED.org. Love to hear you about all this stuff. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks, everybody, for watching the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast.
Take care.